So what do you remember? Go ahead and tell them again what you remember about Barbara Belinda.
Well,
I think that was her name.
she was really elderly, right at 100 at the time. And we were visiting over in Mesa, and I was told that was who that was walking down the street. But
How
I
old were
never
you?
had any other contact with
How
her.
old were you?
They what?
How old were you?
I don't remember. I was possibly a teenager.
Teenager. She was born in like 1840.
I'd have to go pull it up on the
Amazing.
But
thing.
my grandmother, Haws, she lived here in Mesa on 2nd Avenue. And I used my folks that leave me there from time to time to do little chores for her. But and my grandfather, Haws, lived in Mexico most of the time. We had a house over on University that he built for my folks. And that's where we lived most of my teenage years. And,
if you had to describe them with a word or a couple of words, how would you think of these grandparents you're talking about? Were they funny? Were they serious? Were you scared of them? Did they make cookies for you?
oh, I don't know how to put it into words. How would I describe it? Let you describe it.
Well, you've
He
often,
would be, Lynn would be a good description of.
yeah, his family was very easygoing. They spent a lot of time together. His mother's brothers and sisters lived here in the valley, a lot of them, and they would go up to Granite Reef. Is that where you often went?
Yeah. We used to get together on different holidays. And, yeah, we had a lot of family dinners, and family come from out of town. Why, they'd get busy and make some ice cream. And that was just a normal thing. If somebody come from out of town, then they maybe have some watermelon and ice cream. So yeah, the Haws group was we got together pretty regular. About every year for many years we have family reunions. And,
And your dad's mom lived up in Snowflake?
She lived in Snowflake with my uncle and his wife. It was his wife's mother. If you go up to Snowflake, any of the old timers, if you ask them about William C. Smith, they all knew him. He was a seminary teacher and he was bishop. And my mother, I don't know how old she was. She was, I guess, getting a little elderly when I went up there and visit. I don't know. I was probably my early teens when we went up there to visit. And then it wasn't too long after that she passed away. I think my dad went up there for the funeral. But, yeah, most of my, 1934, I guess I was, 16 or 17 when we moved to Chandler. And the rest of the time we lived here in Mesa on University.
Can you tell me about a special, I guess, story about one of your parents, something that they did for you, or something that you remember special that they did, something, just an instance of something they did, something that you remember in your life as an example to you, or something that you want to emulate?
My dad was a farmer, and always had a bunch of cows to milk. He,
Tell them about the time that you climbed in the back of the wagon and the horses took off.
yeah, that would have been, I probably was 8 or 10, maybe, or even less. My dad grew cotton and brought the cotton into the cotton gin. We lived out in Gilbert area, but the cotton gin was here in Mesa. And so I rode with him, and, you know, as he brought the cotton into the gin, and then the gins, they used to have a big old suction deal that suck it out for the wagons. So into the gin, and then we were heading for home, or getting ready to go home, and the horses were faced east, which was towards home, and they were getting a little restless. And as I was getting up into the back of the wagon, the horses decided it was time to go home. So they started off, and my dad was able to get a hold of them, finally get them stopped. But then I was bragging to him how I got in the wagon, but that wasn't where he wanted me at that particular point in time, because it was there on Broadway, about just this side of center where the gin was, cement road, and then a cement road, Mesa Drive going south, and that's where the horses, when they got there, they would turn, and horses at a dead run with a wagon behind them, when they make that corner, would have probably just rolled. And I remember as we had to turn a little bit to get to Broadway and then go down Broadway. I remember seeing somebody running, cutting across to help us. And through the years, I always thought that was my dad running to catch up with the team and stop them. But in later years, he said no, that when the team started, he moved, he had a hold of the one horse, the bridle. He said he had him hold of the team right from the start. But they were big horses, and when big horses decide to go, they were a good team, but they weren't a gentle team. But anyway, he said he brought that one horse to his knees several times trying to get him stopped. Of course, he grew up in Mexico with horses, and he knew as much about horses and how to handle them as anybody. But anyway, he was able to stop it, and like a dumb kid, I was bragging how I was able to get in the wagon. And he knew I was in there, and he knew he couldn't let those horses go, and because they'd have made that turn there on the cement road, and we'd have been rolling for sure.
Were they draft horses? Were they big draft horses?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. I don't know, my dad got them, I think, been many years, before I come along, I guess. He said they were 4-year-olds when he got them. And, but they were good work horses. I've heard him mention the farmers used to get together and cotton, they irrigate it, and then they go and cultivate it, and stir the ground up a little bit, and helps them. Anyway, you'd have, say, a 40 acres, and if you just had one team, you basically cultivated one row at a time. Go through and turn out and come back on them. And so the neighboring farmers would get together, and they'd all go cultivate this field when it was just when the moisture was right, and they could move over to this field, and they could get it done while they were. Because once the ground got hard, you didn't do much cultivating except just kind of leave a scratch on the top of it. But he used to say that with this team of horses, when they'd be all day out there cultivating, he said this team of horses would just lap the other horses. They were walking, but they were just had the ability to just walk and cover ground. And I know he said that he could cultivate a row or two every day more than the other horses. But, yeah, when we lived up here on the corner, actually where the 6th Ward is now, we farmed that ground at one time. 6th Ward's on what's that, Mesa Drive and University. There's a church building there, and we farmed that ground for a while. And I've driven those horses mowing hay, and once you got them in the harness, they were pretty good. But they weren't very gentle to catch them. And I know when I've heard my dad say how he used to catch the one horse he could usually catch out in the open and out in the field when they were working regularly. And he'd catch him and then time to the fence. And then the other horse, he'd circle him around, and the other horse would go in behind the one to the fence so that he could get in there and catch the other horse. But it was the one that was harder to catch. In the summertime, when it get hot, they were working, he breathed heavy. You could just hear him. You could hear him a mile away, snorting as he. But my dad said that he was never. That would be like a horse that wind broke and it'd be that way. But said he'd never been. He'd just always been that way. He could work in the heat, but yet when they was doing much work, you could just hear him clear across the field. He was breathing so heavy. One day there when we was catching up horses, the one that could be caught with, and even then, if they weren't working regularly, he'd usually have to lasso them. But once you caught them, they were good team horses. But this one day when this one horse used to have a collar you'd put on to hook your harness to, and as my dad was trying to put the collar on, this horse just lunged forward, and I'm sure the horse knew what he was doing, but he come right down on my dad's foot, on his toes, across, and actually left a print in the ground when he come down. It, then my dad then, I don't know if you've ever heard of a twitch that they use the horses. They give to control them from time to time. It's usually a loop on a rope and a handle so you can twist it. But the horse's upper, well, actually their nose and their upper lip is quite solid. And they put the rope around that big lump on their nose and twist it so that it hurt him. And then you could control him, do anything with him. And I remember after the horse come down on his foot, he got some baling wire and a hay hook that made him a twitch and put it on the horse, and then and then I'd hold him while he harnessed him. But then we moved out to Chandler, and Daddy worked, they called it a San Harrow. That's a proper name, but it's a waterman, water master, I guess. Anyway, there was 2 ditches that come out of the canals that went clear down to West Chandler, which is 7 or 8 miles. And he was responsible for the water and turning it in. Farmers would call him up and order how much water they wanted, and he'd schedule it. And that was his job, to schedule and be responsible for turning it in. And the Salt River Project in this valley, they furnish the irrigation water, and they deliver water to the high point of each quarter section. They're responsible to do that. And from beyond that, then the farmer's got to take care of his own ditches. And but he did that for.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Pinky.
I'll scoot this chair over.
Well, looky here
Or
at
whichever
you.
one you want. You can't have that one, that was mine.
Tell him something about my growing up. I don't know whether I ever grew up, but anyway.
So tell them what one of your favorite hymns is.
Well, I would like to know the question of when was the first time you knew the church was true? When was the first time that you're like, yeah, this is it? Maybe you just always knew.
I don't remember that my folks knew it, and I grew up with it. I just don't really remember when I could tell you that that's the time I knew. I just always knew.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, my folks, when they got married, they lived in Mexico, and they went to the Salt Lake Temple to be married. So that was a pretty good indication that they thought it was true. They didn't get married and then go up there to be sealed. They went up there and were actually married in the Salt Lake Temple.
They have to go by wagon?
No, most of the trip was by train. No, by wagon or really taking. I don't know if they ever did say, well, I did know they went by train. they call Casa Grande, down there in the colonies. The railroad went from there to El Paso, and I suspect that's how they traveled to El Paso. And then they took the train to Salt Lake, which would still be quite a trip, because you don't go straight across the Grand Canyon. You got to circle around. But yeah, that's where they got married.
Can you think of a time in your life when you knew that you were guided by the Spirit?
They say what?
Can you think of a time in your life when you know for sure that you were guided by the Spirit as something specific, whether it was who to marry or sometime to protect your children, or is there some time in your life that really stands out when the Spirit was there to guide you?
No, I guess I was maybe too stubborn. I had my own ideas, and I
think you're probably like my wife. She just always has it.
say that
I think
again.
you're like my wife. She just always has it. We just always have the Spirit, and
Yeah,
we don't know anything else but having the Spirit.
yeah. We moved out to Chandler in 1934, and I went to school there in Chandler until I graduated. And I guess it was probably, well, then I got the job of my senior year as janitor at the church house. And I made $17.50 a month as janitor. And then during that time, they remodeled and put in carpet and pews in the chapel. And I remember, I think there was 4 priests, and the bishop divided us up 2 and 2 and sent us out to talk to people in the ward, see if they would are in favor of it, because in those days we had to pay for it. Salt Lake didn't pay for things. I think they paid partial, but basically you had to raise money for your own. But I thought it was rather interesting that the Jack Mormons or inactive Mormons, whatever you want to call them, they were the ones that was most enthusiastic about it and willing to pay. I thought it was quite remarkable that they never come to church, but ask them for help. They were there. And then as I graduated from high school, well, we played football. We weren't all that outstanding, but we didn't have a very big school, or we were lucky when we had 22 guys out for practice so we could have a scrimmage. That I remember, it must have been my senior year. playing Gilbert High School. And they were even smaller than we were as far as numbers were concerned. And we just, every time we get the ball, we could go for a touchdown. I mean, it was really quite ridiculous in the matchup. But I remember towards the end of the game, Coach was putting everybody in, our freshmen and everyone was getting to play. And towards, I don't know, halfway through the last quarter probably, he sent me in, he says, when you get the ball, kick it. So Gilbert usually run 4 plays and they'd have to punt. And we get the ball, and I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And then the last time we got the ball, and there wasn't anybody left there that, besides some little freshmen, and I mean little. So I ended up kicking the ball. In those days when he played, wasn't like today when you go in offense or defense. In those days when if you were taken out of the game, you couldn't go in until the next quarter. So you played both ways. But anyway, that one game, that's, I guess the only time I ever had the ball in my hands during a game was that game. I got to kick it. Then when I got out of school, the bank was looking for somebody to work in the bank, and they was inquiring and told the bishop they wanted somebody that paid their tithing, and the bishop told them that I did. So I got a job in the bank, worked there for maybe a year and a half. But they had a rule that you had to, you had to make $120 a month before you could get married. You had to have. When I started to work there, I made $50 a month, and I think I did get up to $60. But the branch manager was only making $180 a month. So it was a long ways up to enough. Anyway, wasn't supposed to get married. And I guess it's about that time, actually a little bit before that time, that I got 300 baby chickens.
Why couldn't you get married?
They didn't say, but I would presume, my guess is because they wanted to make sure you was making enough money that you wouldn't be tempted to use some of theirs. They didn't give a reason, but that was just what I assumed. Anyway, I got about 300 chickens. And in fact, I had them, they were up laying hens before I got married. But my mother was stake primary, and in June usually they had their primary conference in Salt Lake, and she'd go up to conference pretty regular, and that it was before we got married that we went up there. Bert and I with Mother and two of my cousins, Leonard and Julius Johnson. Anyway, we drove up to Salt Lake. In those days, you didn't get there quite as quick as you do now. And my mother wouldn't let me drive over 45 mile an hour. And Jacobs Lake, there, that camp and motel that's there, Jacobs Lake, it's owned by, what's the name?
Bowman?
Bowman's. And my grandfather's sister married a Bowman. So the Bowmans were my cousins. There's somebody. We'd stay there on the way up and on the way back. We'd stay there because they were relatives.
Park out here for a minute or two.
That's fine.
All right, let's see here. Here's one I've always loved to know about people because it's history.
Okay, I guess we were going to Salt Lake conference, and the two cousins went along. We stayed overnight in Jacobs Lake, both going and coming. And while we were up there, well, we kind of planned it before we got, it wasn't just planned after we got there. We kind of had it. Anyway, one day when there wasn't much going on conference, Bert and I went to the courthouse in Salt Lake and got married. Wasn't any place supposed to know about it. But that didn't last long. Some of the relatives and
If a newspaper prints all the court proceedings, and one of the court,
we give a fictitious that we lived in Higley and Rittenhouse. But that didn't cover it up enough. The relatives up there picked it up. And I don't know which one it was that told my mother. And they sent a postcard to Berta's mother with the thing in the paper glued to it. So the secret didn't last long. And then, well, actually, Ralph Brown, who was a bishop at that time, he twisted the bank's arm enough that they didn't fire me because I wasn't making enough money. So I worked, I don't know, maybe another year at the bank till they finally let me go. But I guess I would say that's one of the few things I did right, was getting married. Neither one of us has ever been sorry for it. We've had to struggle along the ways. But both of us have tried to live the principles. Like the bank asked before they hired me if I paid my tithing, and the bishop said yes. And I don't remember every year exactly But I'm 100% sure that there was never a year that I didn't pay tithing. I can't remember right offhand whether maybe we might have been short some of those years, and maybe I didn't pay as much as I should, but probably, but we never missed a year without paying it. And, yeah, we lived over there on that place on University that belonged to my parents. And then my dad traded it for 30 acres in Chandler. And we lived there. That was during the time of Pearl Harbor that I think we were still in Mesa when Pearl Harbor happened, but we moved out to Chandler quite soon after that. And I was milking some cows. I think we had 10 maybe. And then I rented a piece of ground down in West Chandler, just the other side of where the dairy was. Rented a piece of 80 acres. And about that time, I had a chance of borrowing some money and buying some more cows. So I went to the draft board and told them what I was going to do. And I said, if you want me, if you're going to draft me, let's do it now. Or don't wait till I borrow some money and get in debt, and then you jerk me out and throw me real in a bind. They sent me a draft card that said 3C. And 1A was, you're in it. So I figured they decided they weren't going to take me, so then we had the cows down West Chandler area. And we lived there in what we call the 30 acres, which is on Knox Road, just east of the railroad track. But then I seemed like I was always tired. I guess it's because I was putting in too many hours probably. But anyway, went to a doctor and he convinced my mother and Vernon the fact that I was working too hard. And if I didn't quit, he was going to kill me. So we abandoned our cows. My dad took them over, and we moved to Mesa. As far as I'm concerned, and I've always felt that way, that was the biggest mistake I ever made when I listened to them telling me I was working too hard. Anyhow.
And that's when you sold the farm and moved here by the temple?
No, we lived out on Broadway and
This is about 1945.
Broadway and Stapley.
So you went back into cows again.
And then my dad made a deal with my Uncle Dave Haws, and he actually traded that 30 acres that he had where we lived there on Knox, and we took over Uncle Dave's cows and dairy. He was actually at a grade A, so we were selling it grade A milk to Boarding Company. So we went back to Chandler, and lived there on the corner of Dobson and
Williamsfield Road is what it was called
Williamsfield
then.
Road then. It's called
Changed.
Chandler Boulevard now.
So all that happened even before Pat was born.
Wow. A long time
But
ago.
then we,
What? I'm almost 60.
Really?
Next month.
Take a shot of that.
Almost 60.
Her next birthday.
yeah, we stayed there till I finally
I'm gonna be 65.
I finally decided to sell the cows. And then I went to one of these schools, tell you how to become a millionaire, real estate school.
They still have those.
And I suggested, trading what I had for some apartments or something. So I went to a local real estate and builder in Chandler, and we made a deal. And then I got that bunch of apartments that I had for a while. And for the land that I had there for the dairy.
So he permanently got out of the dairy cow business December 1973.
Sounds about right.
Really, it was 73.
Right, 73 when they sold the cows, but then we still lived there. We still
Oh.
raised heifers for another few years. And then in 78 is when they bought this house in Mesa, in 78. But we didn't move here to this house until 79 after I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
That's why I couldn't move cows.
Right. So, yeah, if you were, yeah, there would have still
I was
been,
born in 71.
okay, so you would have been to the
That's
farm, we had lots of calves,
Okay. We were
Mhm.
driving on the tractor with Grandpa.
right, still had the tractor,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then we got out of that and got into the frying pan into fire. Got into apartment business. We had 44 apartments and I don't remember, 2 or 3 houses.
Seminar led you wrong?
There what?
Did the seminar lead you wrong? Seminar was wrong.
Oh, I don't remember any. I learned it mostly by mistakes, I think. But I was still, it's when my legs were starting to go bad on me. It's getting to be a job to run the apartments and to get around and check on the apartments or see about them getting them fixed when they needed it when I was on a walker. And I'm like pulling the chain. A guy come by with an offer that he took everything for cash. So I didn't have to worry about collecting, or it was a cash deal. So the 44 apartments I had, and there was 2 houses that I didn't sell on that deal that I was able to sell a little bit later. But that's left with don't owe anybody anything, any money. And I've got enough money in the bank to live on. Of course, I'm getting, I've got these 3 apartments at $450 a piece. And I've got, what's it, $1,200 Social Security. So the interest on the money I've got and the apartments and Social Security comes awful close to covering all my expenses. And if I happen to have a extra, that's sometimes that don't quite cover it, but it's and it's why I started to having some trouble since she had to go for treatment and whatnot. And she has no insurance. So, but I've been able to cover everything. And fact is, when she first came here and I got to fix it, she had some back problems, and so that had bothered her for some time. So once you try to get some insurance, they won't touch you if you've got a pre-existing condition without paying way up here. So I started setting aside $300 a month for her insurance. Just put it aside, and that's more than covered what she's needed, except for the radiation treatments that she had to have. That was a little more than that. 300 wouldn't cover that. So
what I know from your letters that you have a strong testimony about tithing. Besides that, what piece of advice would you want to give to your grandchildren, great grandchildren? What would you want to tell them to? You could tell them one thing to make their lives better and richer and more righteous. What would you want them to do or learn from your life?
Well, I think the biggest thing they need to do, and it's probably one of the hardest things to do for young people coming up, is stay out of debt. And all these advertisements that you see on TV and billboards, you're driving down there wanting you to spend your money. Just, if you can't, a credit card is great, providing that you only buy on a credit card what you can pay for at the end of the month. And because a credit card don't charge any interest as long as you don't have any balance. You can spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a credit card, but when you get the bill in the mail, write them a check and they won't charge any interest. But getting out of debt and getting an education. You've been able to, I guess you got a lot of your education through the military, but
They paid for it all. Paid for the loans from BYU, and then they paid off the loans, and then they paid for a master's degree.
great.
The military paid for it all. Then gave me almost 2 years of training.
Yeah.
So killed two birds with one stone with them. Got rid of the debt and got education. But they take my life.
That's the
Yeah,
thing
they
I've
take
been
your life
trying.
for a few years.
That's the thing I've tried to emphasize for quite a long time, is get an education and get out of debt. And if you do that, you can cope with about anything that comes along. Of course, I guess get an education and get out of debt, and I suspect attend all your church meetings and pay your tithing. If you do those 4 things, you don't have any worries.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. When I was a teenager, we read the scriptures together as we went through seminary, as I went through seminary. And now we read the scriptures every day. In fact, when we first started, it was just 1 chapter. He says, well, we need to read 2 chapters. Well, we need to read 3. So now it's between 3 and 4 chapters a day.
Wow.
We started on the Old Testament, but the Old Testament's real big. So we're only about halfway through the Old Testament. We've already had to start on the New Testament, but we're about halfway through that. Plus Elder Kikuchi, of course, we've already, just the 2 of us have read the Book of Mormon 3 times together, just in the past few years. And Elder Kikuchi reminded us, read a chapter of the Book of Mormon every day. So we read the Book of Mormon, we read the New Testament, doing the Old Testament. And the other day he says, well, we need to read the Doctrine and Covenants. I said, well, as soon as we're done with the New Testament. So, but we're already halfway through that. So it's nice because to watch him as he still lives all the principles that he's taught of honesty, of hard work, of diligence, faithfulness, prayer, scriptures, every day. He doesn't gossip. He doesn't find fault with people. There was an incident where a family member was upset about something, and I was thinking, oh, and later when we found out the reason, he said, see, you just have to find out what it was all about, and then you'll know why they're upset. And that's how he treats people. He doesn't judge them. He doesn't, he stops, waits. Usually if you wait, after a time, you'll find out why. But that's the kind of person he is. He lives the gospel. He treats people fairly and honestly. He doesn't treat them harshly. He's forgiving. He's kind. When Dixie was here a few weeks ago, she said, Dad, thanks for being my dad, and I really love you. She says, you don't know how many people don't have good parents. But we had parents who took care of us. That's what they wanted. They wanted children, and they wanted to take care of them. And just, we always felt safe and loved at home. Nobody was perfect, but and we could all probably think of a half a dozen incidents of something, but there was no place I ever wanted to be other than at home with my family. It's the same now. There's no place I want to be. Even poor Pat, when she's in the hospital this past week, she couldn't get away from me. But family is so important, and both of my parents have spent their time is devoted to taking care of their family. All the trips we flew up to Utah so we could visit Sandra and Kid and their sweet children, and we could do it just of course they were sweet, all of them, but everything that my parents did was for God and family. The church jobs that they held, fasting and praying, family's always been number one, serving the Lord.
I think the one thing that I did that I've never regretted, and I think it was the best thing I ever did in my life, is when we went up to Salt Lake and got married. I haven't been sorry for that even an instant. It's a lot of things I've accomplished. I can blame it on the murder. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Grandpa, for sharing that. It means a lot to people to learn a little bit about you.
Yes, sir. Family is the most important thing there is.
Something, when we were coming back from the reunion, that your mom was in charge, and Tuesday, Michelle was writing back with me, and she asked me the question. Well, how did all of your family active in the church? What did your parents do? I thought, what did my parents do that were all active in the church? One thing I can think of, they simply lived the gospel. You know, there wasn't any other way to do this, to do that. No, they were straight down the middle. They just simply lived the gospel. And taught us that way by living it. I don't know if they did any particular thing. They just simply lived it. Followed their example. Have to. There was never a question of what do we do? We followed the Lord and everything.
That's a great testament to Grandpa. 10 kids, and all of them are
As far as I know, they're all
Yeah.
active.
active in the church.
Yeah.
That's a
Following Jesus Christ,
We just did it. There never was a question. Do we go do this or we do this? I never questioned anything on Sunday.
you go down the 10 Commandments, you just did them. And it wasn't like anybody was forced. It was just the right thing to do.
They didn't send us to church, they took us to church. They were doing it right along, so it wasn't anything that we had to do that they weren't. They were the ones doing it, so we just followed right along.
Family prayer every day. Just family prayer, scriptures, seminary, church attendance, and when the bank was looking for somebody, they were looking for an honest person. So that's back then the town was small enough you could go to the schools and the churches and stuff and ask them. But I mean, they were looking for an honest person to work in the bank, and so that Wendell Eyring was recommended as an honest person that they could trust to work in the bank.
Yeah, I think the main reason that, in fact, I know the main reason that they let me go was because I was making mistakes, putting the stuff in the computer. I still have to fight the computer because I don't. Working at the Warren Financial, I have to type it in and I have to look at it again. Quite often I have to make a change. But
that's where I get that problem from.
Those typing skills.
Well,
I
no,
watch
can't
these.
keep numbers straight.
Yeah.
Now I know where I got that from.
I watch these people, the banks, the clerks, sitting there, the computer going, just, I couldn't do it that way. I never would. Like I say, I think that's 90% of the reason that I was let go at the bank. I was making too many errors. There was one time we went to the motor vehicle division. Had to get new license. It was a colored gal that we actually ended up going to. But I don't know how in the world she was able to type.
This was about 3 years ago.
She had fingernails that long. I mean, it's the longest nails I've ever seen. And how she could type and not hit the other key with those long fingernails. But she was good.
What's the first thing you want to say to Verda when you see her again?
Say again?
What's the first thing you want to say to your wife when you see her again?
Probably that I love her. Or maybe, why did you run out on me?
I believe so too.
Yes, she just slowly went down. Something had come along and set her back, and it was amazing. The recovery she had every time something hit her, she bounced right back. But you could see that each time she didn't come back quite as far. She'd go down and she'd come up. And each time was just a little bit less.
I remember with her as a child, she was always acted so happy to see me. No matter when it was, she was always happy to see me and gave me a hug, and
What?
just was always
It wasn't an act.
just. I just remember
Yeah, her face
knocking
was,
on the door and waiting for Grandma to answer the door because she was always so happy.
yeah, her face would just light up.
Yeah, it was never an act. It genuinely loved me.
Yeah, an example of how her body would react and recover when she got that lymphoma, these glands under here, and it was starting to swell under her neck, and because it was cancerous in the lymph glands. And we went to the, what do they call them? I was going to say gynecologist.
Oncologist?
Oncologist.
Yeah. And he gave her,
Different chair or something.
it was, I think there was 3 of those bottles I hang up to drip. Took probably close to an hour to drip it all in. They dripped that into her system. And I remember one of the, was a red medicine that was part of what they was putting in. And when the nurse was removing the needle, she said she had to be real careful and make sure that there wasn't any medicine left in the needle, because she got a drop of that on her skin, it would burn her. And they put a pint of that in her system. And it's supposed to make you real sick when you go for that chemotherapy. It never fazed her. She went out in the morning, and that evening the family got together over at Mata's. She had Mexican food that evening. Never fazed her. And the next morning, it appeared as that swelling was starting down and under her neck. It just reacted that fast. And she went through those treatments, and then they used radiation besides. And, but like I say, every time she got something serious, she would recover from it, and you wouldn't think there's anything wrong. But the last couple of times, she didn't quite bounce back as well. When she got weaker and they called it
Congestive heart failure.
congestive heart failure. The heart wasn't pumping it, getting rid of the fluids. And yeah,
Well, thank you, Grandpa. You've left a great legacy for
well,
your life and your example.
thank you.
On behalf of all your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, thank you for being our...
Yeah, I don't know what the total is. I think we figured that with 10 kids
Hard to keep track.
and 45 grandkids, and what's the last count, 76 or 77
76 or
great-grandkids.
76 grandchildren.
And then
Great
we've
great grandchildren.
now got 3 greats, 5 generations.
Another one on the way. Marcus,
And what?
Marcus, Chelsea was having one next month.
Oh, yeah.
No, this month. I think they're gonna take it on the 26th on Wendy's birthday.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
And Randa's expecting.
Last year, the year before last, when Wendy's 2 boys, each had a
great-grandchildren.
child, they made it a point to come down here for Thanksgiving. And we got together and were able to take several 5-generation pictures.
wow.
In fact, Wendy's oldest,
Joshua.
we've got a 5-generation picture. In fact, I think it's hanging in there above the desk. 5-generation picture when he was a baby and my mother was still alive.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so now we've got 5-generation
He went away,
pictures.
but he was aware of it. I don't know, the grandma was aware
Yeah.
of it.
No, I don't think my mother was aware of what was going on, but
I think Josh was
yeah,
Another 20 years.
10.
You have 6 generations.
they, yeah, I don't think,
Yeah.
he tells me he's not planning on being here another 10 or 20
Another
years.
20.
Yeah, that'd make you 108.
yeah. Well, my mother was 98.
Wow.
I
No.
feel okay. A little bit, I have a hard time getting up and down, and I can't walk without the walker. But beyond that, I feel okay. That dialysis takes a lot of energy out of me. 3 times a week. And they plug into one of the veins, take the blood and run it through a filter and put it back in. Yeah, for a little over 4 hours. Would you say they're circulating it 7 times, is it?
About 7 or 8 times.
Actually circulating the blood through the filter. They,
Good part-time job. 12 hours a week.
they take out almost a gallon of fluid each time.
3.5 to 4 kilos, which is, kilo is 2.2 pounds.
I think there's once or twice that we actually could come up with 8 pounds, didn't we? But 7 pounds plus.
They take out 4 kilos, that's over 8 pounds.
Yeah.
About a gallon, I guess.
So
All right, well, we'll let you get your rest. Tired you out. That's 2 hours of talking.
Yeah.
these box Kodaks.
Yeah. Wonder whatever happened to that.
Cloverine
Oh,
sound.
it's probably around here somewhere.
I don't know, I haven't seen that in years. It used to be fun to play with it as a kid.
Yeah. I know I'd never throw anything away, so I'm sure it's here.
Okey-dokey. Well, have a safe trip down to Dan. Tell her hello.
I will. Thank you, Pat.
Give that little one
Thanks.
extra.
Granted. We don't even think about it. And when I see other people living a certain, I think, well, why would you do that? Aren't you gonna?
Yeah.
And sometimes when members of the church that have come from a good family marry outside of the church, they think that those people are going to have the same values, but they don't. Sister Phoebe Allen Smith was my Aunt Lucille's best friend in high school, and she was LDS, but when she got married, she married a guy who was not LDS. And he was a nice person. She said he was always a good person. But and I don't know how long they were married, 20, 30, 40 years, when he finally decided to join the church. And she said he was so much nicer. She says, I don't know how to explain it, because he was always a good and nice person. But afterwards, after he was baptized and he had the priesthood, he was a different person.
Wow.
But when you marry out of the covenant, out of the church, you don't. And so it's.
My wife and I are same community,
And even
same socioeconomics, same schools, same religion, and it's still hard.
well, yes, life is hard anyway.
I can't imagine not having all those things in place that we
Yeah.
agree on, just like you said, naturally.
Yes.
And of course, we're going to go to church,
Yeah.
get married in the temple.
You don't even think
course.
about it. You get up. You don't have to think every Sunday, am I going to go to church this week?
Yeah.
You just do it. That's, like Pat said, was our parents. It just was automatic. It was because they wanted to. Nobody was making them.
Yeah.
I'm still taking the church.
Yeah, we're just thinking, we were lucky. Went off Salt Lake and got married. Of course, didn't get married in the temple. But we got back here. Her dad really got onto it. Talked to all the powers that be, and I don't know how we were married in the temple within a couple of weeks.
June 22nd, I believe.
He,
So 12 days later.
Yeah, that's changed.
Right. It's a year or two wait now.
Yeah.
But I mean, they just kids. Always wanted to get married, and they had an opportunity, so they did. And if their parents set them on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to think of your grandparents as young and in love, and crazy and in love, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah, like I keep remarking when we go by the temple, especially on Saturdays, because it's all of taking pictures and I keep making the remark, crazy kids, they don't know it can't be done.
But that's what faith does for you. The Lord said it can be done. So you have faith in Him, and you just keep moving along that way. And then you look back at your life, think, yeah, He was right.
Yes, it is amazing. Always gets better.
Because I suspect you weren't much different than most. When you first got married, you couldn't even visualize what was coming.
Nope.
And you were at the point you didn't care, that's what you wanted. But you had the background that it's
Never questioned that it's not going to work.